Well, welcome to another Paizo Friday. Actually, it's Pathfinder Friday now.
That's right. Yeah.
I haven't wrapped my head around that change. It's Pathfinder Friday.
Yeah.
And today it's a special one. It is called Deconstructing Doomsday Dawn.
That's right. Yeah.
Or Doomsday Dawn Deconstruction.
We'll figure it out one way or the other.
Doomsday Dan deconstructs.
Dan deconstructs Dooms. No, we're messing with it too much now. Yeah. No.
Now we're going to say it wrong the whole time.
Yeah. We're just going to keep messing it up.
If you haven't gotten it yet, we are going to be deconstructing Doomsday 1, Part 1, The Lost Star.
Yeah. The first adventure.
Yeah, and right off the bat, first of all, spoiler alert. If you have not played this and you're planning on playing this one, and this is going to continue. This is going to be a running theme through all of the Doomsday Dawn Deconstructed.
Yeah.
It's going to be spoilers. We're going to be talking about the chapter, talking about the adventure, and so just make sure that spoilers are ahead and everything else. So
yeah, I mean, if you haven't played and you are planning on playing Doomsday Dawn and you haven't played Part 1 just yet, you probably want to maybe pause on watching this. You might want to give it a bit and play your game first before you before you watch this, because I'm not going to be shy about spoiling the adventure.
No.
Because really what we need to do now is we've been playtesting for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, closing in on a month now, and we're getting to that point where we need to start moving the playtest forward, and we need to start looking at some of the data we've collected, and I can't be shy about what's in there anymore.
Right. So with no restrictions on spoilers.
That's right.
Let's begin the Doomsday Dan Deconstructed.
I
know.
I
know.
You're going to get it one of these. All right. So
I know what I said. Anyway, if you did not see it yesterday, we were all in this room together. I was behind the computer. Jason was in this very chair, right here, running 4 folks.
My throne
through the adventure, and it was great. It was great. If you missed it, it is up as a highlight. There is a playlist that started this first video on the playlist for the Doomsday Dawn live play.
Yep.
It's right here on Twitch. It's also going to be going up on Monday. Part 1 will go up on Monday, and Part 2 will go up on Tuesday. So that's going to be available to watch if you've missed it. Don't make that mistake again, because it was great.
It was a lot of fun.
And so
great group.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the way that we're doing this, it's going to be different GMs are going to be running different sections.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 6 GMs lined up to run the 7 sections. Mm-hmm. Because I'm running twice. I got greedy. I wrote 2 parts of Doomsday Dawn, so I'm running twice. You won't see me again until Part 5, so there's like 6 weeks before I jump back in the hot seat. So
we get a bit of a break.
Yeah, we get a bit of a break. Next week Thursday, Logan Bonner is going to take over, and he's going to run for the next 2 Thursdays in a row, running Part 2 of Doomsday Dawn.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is the part he wrote.
Yeah, and so now, for the most part, the people that had the biggest hand in creating that section, are they the ones that are GMing, or is it?
Generally speaking, that's not always the case. Part 4, we're going to have a guest GM. I'm not sure if we've announced it yet. So
just so you know, I personally, and on this channel, as far as I know, unless we've started doing other shows that I'm not on.
When you're not here, we run other Twitch shows.
I don't put it past it.
No. We just.
I wouldn't be surprised.
We just sneak in.
They probably do a very good job.
It's
I've not mentioned anybody that is GMing any of the sections coming up at all.
Yeah.
And so there's some of them obviously I've got a schedule I'm putting up on Twitch, so it will be up eventually.
Sure.
I just thought we'd kind of hang on to it as much as we could, because there's some really cool ones in there.
Yeah, no, we've got some exciting GMs and some exciting players too. We've drawn from like all across Paizo. We've got people from customer service, people from our tech team, people from edit, people from development, from all across finance. We've got players from all across Paizo of varying skill levels. Not all of them are game designers and developers. Some of them are just enthusiasts, like many of you.
Right.
So it should be really exciting watching them play through. And it's important to know why we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now there's we've been trying to talk a lot at length about the surveys. Really quick, let's just recap that. What are we doing with the surveys? How are they going to work?
Sure. So the surveys, the first set of surveys launched here right at Gen Con, and those surveys are really for Doomsday Dawn Part 1. They are the player survey, the GM survey, and the open response survey. In addition, we had a host of surveys open up for the PFS scenarios as well. So there's a player and GM survey for each of the 3 Pathfinder Society second edition events that went up. So you've got a number of surveys, but you don't have all of them yet. The surveys for Part 2 of Doomsday Dawn are going to open on Monday.
Okay.
So we are putting those up right now. We are getting those all put together and all ready, and those are going to go live on Monday.
So really quick, Part 2 goes up, Part 1 goes off?
No, that's the great thing. So we are able to get a lot of data from our surveys, even though they're not closed. So we can gather a lot of data from them, but we can leave them open. For those of you who are playing, at home and you maybe aren't playing at the same pace the rest of us are, you can still submit your survey results. We are going to keep those surveys open until the end of the year.
Okay.
So, your survey data will still be valuable to us. We're going to check back in on those and see how they kind of evolve over time. One of the most fascinating parts about these has been watching the results shift over time. How certain trends have emerged, how certain parts of the data have slowly changed. There's some really interesting ones. I'll talk about them later when we get into some survey results specifically. But yeah, so that's those. We're also in about a month from now, a little less than a month from now, we're going to be launching a number of other surveys. Surveys that aren't related to Doomsday Dawn. We're going to have a survey that talks specifically about the ancestries in the game. We're going to have a survey that talks about the classes in the game. We're going to have surveys that talk about the information design, surveys that talk about how combat works. We're going to dig into some of those other systems specifically. And even if you haven't played Doomsday Dawn, that's going to be a way for you to give us your feedback in a way that we can measure the results and figure out what's really going on there and kind of dig deeper into how the game is actually working for people, both for those who play it and those who have just read it. So we're really excited to do that. That all launches in about a month.
Okay, so right as the weather starts to turn fall.
That's right, yeah. Late September is when we want to make sure those are up by.
Okay, because fall is the best time of year.
That's right, everybody knows that.
Everybody does know.
Yeah.
And now you say that, so we've got the Part 1 surveys not closed. I can still go in and do it.
Correct.
But let's say it is it's Halloween, right? And I'm like, I finally finished Part 1 on Halloween for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I go on and I fill out the Part 1 survey.
Yeah.
Is that still going to be is that still going to be a looked at part even though it's so late? Is it still going to be considered?
We're going to keep coming back to the surveys, even the ones that are a little older, just to make sure that a lot of our data is still solid and that it's still moving in the right direction.
Okay.
Right? If people who come to play the game a month from now and there's a lot of folk and they're having a lot of troubles, we want to be able to see those trend lines as well.
Right.
So I think a lot of what this data allows us to do, it's not just about what one survey tells us, it's also about how those surveys compare to one another over time.
Okay.
So we'll be coming back to the surveys on a regular basis. So Part 1 kind of forms the first dot in our graph of data. And if that dot moves over time, we want to know that. Okay. So your survey responses, the survey responses of players at home is going to be valuable to us right up to the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no voice goes unheard.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about making sure, first of all, that, again, we're going to start talking about the playtest.
Sure.
Okay. So, again, if you missed it at the top of the show, there's going to be spoilers. And so I want to make sure you know, because I don't want to start talking and then see a wall of spoilers.
We're about to hit the point of no return.
Yeah. And as much as we'd love to have you join us and come along on this ride of reflection and deconstruction.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you know that there's going to be some spoilers here. So, first of all, did you have fun?
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. I had a great time.
It was a good time.
Yeah, I think, we were kind of doing something a little experimental, right? I mean, not just for us Twitch streaming here in the office, but we only had 3 hours to get through part 1 of Doomsday Dawn. That's not enough time.
Yeah.
And for the later parts as well, even though we're running them over 2 sessions, might not be enough time for all the pieces, right? And so I think one of the things that we want to stress to people who are watching is that we're trying to give you a sense of the game and a sense of how we play it and how we take it apart and how we understand it.
Right.
It's not necessarily every minute from the game. You noticed last night I kind of truncated a piece because we were running out of time and I didn't want to end on the middle of a sand trap, right? It's like, and that's the sand trap, everybody. We'll see you next week for part 2. I mean, they didn't get to the boss at the end, but somebody choked a little, right?
Yeah, and that's fair. I think the one thing to keep in mind is that when we hit that 5 o'clock time, I'm like pushing everybody out the door.
Yeah,
like,
no, we
I
gotta
don't
go.
let you mess around.
Yeah.
So, but I did notice in chat that there were a lot of people asking about the truncated adventure that was happening last night. I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to at least get your thoughts on it and what to expect moving forward.
Yeah, I think moving forward, some of the pieces are going to run really long, and we might skip entire portions of them just to make sure that we can kind of play with all of the pieces and kind of show off some of the parts. Mind you, that means we're not actually getting the most accurate experience of that adventure. We kind of leave that for you at home. Our playtest here isn't going to be something that we use to make a lot of serious decisions about the game.
Right.
It's for fun, but it's also there to serve as a way for those that don't have a group or those who aren't going to get a chance to playtest to get a chance to get a sense of what the game is about and a sense of what the story is about, because I'm going to be real interested to see how people play with this story as it goes forward. There's some really interesting stuff coming up. And, I want people to be able to experience that. So there's a lot of different reasons why we're doing this. I think first and foremost, though, it's just fun. And we work at a game company. Can we please sit down and play some games every once in a while? Is that too much to ask?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It is the serious business of fun.
That's right. Very serious.
For instance, speaking of serious business, this didn't get mentioned on the Starfinder show on Wednesday.
Oh my God.
But I discovered that if you took a Goblin plushie and the Starfinder koozies that we make for cans actually fits like a pair of overalls.
Oh, that's fine.
Or coveralls.
He's adorable. Yeah.
On our Goblin plushie. So that was actually on the show on Starfinder. But
it was kind of hiding
I forgot
back there,
about it. So I was like, well, I got to show it off.
That's fair.
So I'm going to let
adorable.
you keep that.
Aw. He's a little guy.
So, all right. So then, out of everything, what do you think was like, oh, we nailed, like that was perfect. That did that perfectly.
I think we got to see some really interesting interaction with how some of those encounters play out. I think some of that's going to speak to some of our survey data as well, but like how everyone was able to participate in the use fight really well, even though, they didn't have the right weapon loadout or they didn't have the right pieces, right? I think that worked out really well. I thought the fight with the goblins was appropriately dangerous, but not overly life-threatening. Like, nobody died, but, it was a little hairy there a little bit. And that encounter's supposed to be a little hairy a little bit. So I thought a lot of the pieces, Drakus obviously is a terrifying bruiser. And, I think a lot of groups have had some trouble with him. But he is the boss of the dungeon, right? He's the bad guy. He's the final guy you're there to fight.
Should be kind of a...
Yeah, if he's not hard... He's adorable. If he's not hard to fight, then, we've done something wrong. Right, the numbers aren't adding up the right way. So I thought a lot of that went really right. I really loved everyone's character. I thought they all had a great time. They all had a lot of fun. They all made their characters in like 30 minutes each, but then again, they've had some practice, which is one of those things that we see as people build characters. So, some interesting data, some interesting conclusions about how some things worked. Some of that backs up some of our survey data. Some of it goes a little contrary to that, but that's the nature of this. So, some good stuff.
Based off of that, I know there's a couple of things that came up in the chat that I would like to chat about just because it did come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was some confusion about the attack penalties that were happening with Katina's character.
Oh, sure. I think it happened with a few of the others as well.
Okay.
So we've got this multiple attack penalty, right? Every attack after the first takes either a -5 usually, but -4 if it's agile.
Okay.
And Katina, I was sitting right next to her, was doing a lot of the math in her head.
Mm-hmm.
So she just rolled the die and tell us what the result was. And I saw her doing it, and she was doing it just fine. But it does remind me that, hey, we're on a stream. We might want to be a bit more vocal about how those things, just so that the folks watching aren't confused.
Right,
Because I think sometimes she would just roll and just say the numbers. But I think that's something we can clean up as we go along.
Yeah.
Those penalties are a really important part of the game and a really important part of the power balance. She came off looking kind of like a rock star for a lot of that game. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, a lot of it was that magic rainbow die she had. That thing was murder.
That was pretty powerful.
Yeah, you're not finding a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. You're finding a tiger claw in your larynx. Yeah, she was ripping people to pieces with that thing. So I think everybody else was just kind of in awe. Poor Chris couldn't roll above like a 5. It was bad.
He was the Joe O'Brien of the group.
Yeah, it's true. He
and it's
he just
some water pump.
Yeah, no, we're all good.
So speaking of that, last night I was afterwards. I got home. I was on the GCP. They were streaming some of their stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And I got folks in the stream asking me, "Hey, I can't find the rules for creating a tiefling."
Ron and his
Jason,
tiefling. Yeah.
Can you clear this up right now?
Yeah, sure.
What was a tiefling doing in the playthrough last night?
Well, he wasn't a tiefling, and we mentioned this right at the get-go, and I got to chat with Ron about it. But his character's name was Melek the Tiefling, but the Tiefling is in big quotes because he's not actually a tiefling. He's just a human sorcerer with the demonic bloodline.
Right.
So, like, his friends and neighbors when he was a kid called him the Tiefling, but we realized afterwards, we were like, oh yeah, some people might really be confused by that.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure to note that a little cleaner in the future. Yeah. No, he's not playing a tiefling yet.
No, he's not.
No, not yet. No one in the design pit is designing tieflings just yet.
It's a lot like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah,
he's not really a rock.
He's not really a rock. You don't go,
I guess.
How can I play a rock?
And you know what? Yeah, I guess to circle back around. So the ruling for normal, it's for flurry.
Yeah.
So it should be 0, -4, -8. Wait.
Well, okay. So Flurry of Blows, is an activity.
Gotcha.
It's one action, and it says make 2 strikes. That's the basics of what it does.
Okay.
What it doesn't say anywhere in there is ignore the multiple attack penalties.
I see.
So,
okay. I gotcha.
So
yeah.
what you do is you use Flurry of Blows, and it allows you to take 2 attacks for one action. So you can do your first punch at normal, and then your second punch is at a -5 or -4 if it's agile.
I gotcha. Okay.
Then
all right.
If you decide to take more attacks, they go to -10 or -8 if they're agile, and that's everything from your third attack onward.
Right.
So because her claws were agile, she was going 0, -4, -8, -8 if she took all 4 attacks.
Okay. All right.
She didn't do that too often, though, because those last -8s are kind of long shots. She had better things to do with her actions most of the time. So.
Right.
Yeah, it worked out just fine.
Okay. So let's see. All of that. Is there anything else you wanted to?
No, not from our playthrough.
Okay.
I'm more interested in everyone else's playthroughs, right? I mean, I loved our playthrough. It was a lot of fun, but we are swimming in survey data now.
Yeah.
I'm drowning in it back there. I spent 4 hours today just doing crosstabs.
So for me, I think that on the one hand, because I've done surveys for Paizo before, and on the one hand, it's a lot of data to look through. But on the other hand, sometimes you like find these interesting stories, like these really cool little narratives that you can work out.
Oh, I've got plenty. I've got a lot.
What do you got for us, Jason?
I have so much stuff. So to start off, I want to talk about kind of what we learned about what kind of characters people play. There's some really interesting data in here. I'll give you some of it. I'm not going to focus too much on numbers. Suffice to say, we are kind of blown away by the number of responses we have. It is well above my benchmarks for kind of the minimum level of confidence in the survey, right? If you get 100 responses, you can't really hold the survey in too high regard because your margin of error is huge, and it depends on how big your audience is. But we are pulling our results from only those who have completed surveys. So if your survey is incomplete, you're not being counted right now, which is why it's so important for you to complete your surveys. These results are self-selecting. That's important to know. Anyone who's ever looked at survey data, self-selecting surveys always come with a kind of a caveat on them that says, this isn't a true random sampling. These are people who chose to give you an answer.
Right.
That does indicate some bias, but in this case, it's the nature of the beast. But we do think our margin of error is somewhere between, is around plus or minus 2.5% to 3%. So we are now at the point with the number of responses that we have that I think most of our percentage numbers are now really quite solid.
Okay.
So I want to start by talking about what kind of characters people are playing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So we'll start with ancestry. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. The most common ancestry is human. It's about 25%.
And that, I mean, that makes sense.
No, that's no surprise. Roughly tied for second is Elfin Goblin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Goblin. Okay.
Yeah. No, at about 15%. Both of them are around 15%. We'll talk in generalities because I don't want to get into. Well, it was actually 6.87%. So dwarf came in right behind them at 12.
Okay.
And everybody else, half elves, half orcs, gnomes, halflings, are between 6 and 8% each.
Okay.
Roughly.
Nice.
Roughly. Not too surprising to us. We're kind of that's data that we look at and go, yeah, that's kind of expected.
Yeah.
Classes.
Okay.
3 classes are tied close to the top.
Okay.
One has a little bit of an edge. Cleric, most popular class.
Okay.
Right? In terms of total number of characters entered, very closely followed by fighter and rogue. They're around 12% each. Cleric has a bit of an edge.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know me. Go Team Rogue.
Yeah,
I'm
go
very
Team
happy
Rogue.
about this. So,
well, I've got some good news for you, and I got some bad news later for you. So we'll keep going.
All right.
Most of the others clock it at around 7 or 8% each, with the barbarian, monk, and ranger lagging behind a little bit at around 6%. Mm-hmm. I don't know that tells us much of anything other than some classes are more popular than others. That's
right.
not really a surprise. I do want to talk about alignment.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we asked a lot of questions, right? So we asked
As
some
you
questions.
need to.
We asked some questions about our audience, like who are you, just so that we know who's playing Pathfinder. But then we dug into your character and what when you made your character for Doomsday Dawn, tell us about your character and kind of what the character was all about. And one of those questions was alignment. So, and this is kind of interesting. Neutral good is by far the most popular alignment. It's winning at 24%.
Really?
A full quarter of characters are neutral good. On the flip side, not very many people are lawful neutral. That alignment excites no one, as it turns out. Well, what do you like? I like rules and order. Well, I mean, in society or like in an evil empire? No. I just like rules.
Rule things.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I like rules.
Yeah.
I'm good, evil, whatever. I just want rules.
Rules and rules-based accessories.
That's right.
That's all I want to play with.
That's what I want.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What about, are you tracking evil?
Well, we did ask people if there were any evil alignments out there.
I want to know this.
So 2% of players, 2%, decided to be evil. and that means their GMs were like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Yeah, the interesting part in the next question ties into this too.
Interesting.
Is deity.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So as it turns out, the most popular deity in Pathfinder, at least according to this, who are playing the playtest, who decided to give us responses. I don't want. None of this is spoken with the certainty of law. The most common deity amongst characters was Caden Kalian. So people like to get their drink on with their deity who likes to party and adventure.
It turns out people like to play and have fun and maybe have a drink while they're playing.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Might as well have a deity that helps
make
that feel all right.
Getting back to those evil characters, this is poor Asmodeus.
How's Asmodeus doing?
As a deity.
Yeah.
He's got 3.
Okay. 300?
3. Not percent. 3. He has 3 followers in the entire playtest.
This many?
3.
Okay.
3. Yeah.
All right.
It's not many.
You know.
Poor guy.
That's just bad PR.
No, yeah,
Like,
he
that's
needs better PR.
It's hard to beat Caden Kalian's PR.
No, it is. It is. Yeah, because he's got booze. And what do you got? Laws. Evil laws.
Evil laws.
Yeah. So we also then tracked, one of the questions that people might have been like, why did you ask a question about how much money characters had left? We asked you how many silver pieces you had left.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the answer, the average amount of money characters had left was 32 silver pieces out of 150. That's an interesting piece of data for us for one reason that may not seem obvious. When we give out money and when we price goods, we want to make sure that characters have enough money to buy the things that they need to be an adventurer. So if that number were very small, if it were like 2 or 3 silver pieces, we would know that we were giving out so little that everyone was spending up to the cap and kind of running out. But the fact that it's about 30 tells us that we're close. We may not be perfect. There might be some fine-tuning in there, but we're close. And as per usual, as a surprise to no one who's ever played this game, monks ended up with the most money left over at 64. They don't have to buy armor. They don't have to buy weapons. They're just like, I don't know, I got this fruit basket and some rope.
I'm good.
No, they're fine. So yeah, we tracked a number of interesting things. We were able to cross-tab out kind of the most common builds by ancestry. So if you were playing a dwarf, you were most likely to be playing a cleric.
Okay.
If you were playing,
oh really? So based off of like what your ancestry was, you could
we were able to break that down.
I like that.
If you're playing an elf, it was a tie between rogue and wizard. If you're playing a gnome, you're probably a bard. If you're playing a goblin, you were probably a rogue.
Really?
Yeah, beat out alchemist. Not by much, but beat out alchemist.
So when you're looking at all of these different things, like all of these different bits of data, what is it saying about like to you? If you had to do like this is Jason's quick quip on what the game is like right now, what would you say that is?
Well, so one of the things that's interesting there is that we saw that, especially amongst that little piece of data, that the data was telling us that, first of all, a lot of the traditions still hold true. What a surprise. There's a lot of dwarven clerics and dwarven fighters.
Right.
Now, some of that is tradition from the game. Other bits of that are reinforcement based on your ability score choices. So we still think those have kind of an outsized influence on your character, despite the fact that we kind of opened it up. Because now we give you this free choice, right? We say, hey, have another choice, and it can be kind of whatever you want it to be. And that allows you to kind of build a different character if you want. Your ancestry isn't kind of pointing you in that direction. But even with that, the trends still hold very solid. A lot of characters end up falling right into their niches. I mean, halfling is rogue. That's not a surprise to anyone. Oh, halflings are rogues? Oh, weird. Right? So I think some of this, and the thing to remember about the survey data we're getting right now, this is first level. This is baseline in every sense of the word. So if some of this came out drastically different than we expected, I think then we'd be more worried. Than we are.
I could see that.
A lot of it's confirming some of what we thought and how some of the build and how the rules are actually reinforcing Pathfinder being what we've always known it to be. So that's kind of it about the characters themselves. There's a lot more though about.
So does it get into the experiential side, like what people are experiencing while they're playing, or anything like that?
Yeah, part 2 of the survey really kind of talks about the play experience. So the first part of that is kind of how long did it take for you to make your character? So we find that on average that's at about 114 minutes. So just shy of 2 hours.
Okay.
With druids and clerics coming in quite a bit above the average.
Really?
Right? Yeah, they're at about 30 minutes up.
Okay.
Now that tells us something. That tells us that druids and clerics have the most complicated additional systems to learn. It also tells us that when we are looking at what to do with the final version of the game, we might want to include some shortcuts in there to make it a little easier for them.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
So if we can find some ways to make it so that the kind of through line process of how you build a druid kind of allows you to say, hey, make sure to include enough information about animal companions actually in the druid so that you can make the choice about whether or not you want an animal companion without having to go read the 4 pages of animal companion rules, because that's adding a lot to your build time.
Oh, I gotcha.
It's not the end all be all of the world, but it is something important for us to the game, right? Is how quickly can you get into the game experience?
Right.
Barbarians, fighters, monks, and rangers are the fastest. They took about 90 to 95 minutes or so for most people to make their characters.
Okay.
I think the thing that's going to be most interesting for this particular piece of data for us is, does it get shorter with part 2?
Yeah. Oh, wait. So we'll be tracking that all over again.
I'm asking this question every time.
Nice.
So
okay.
some of these questions you will see again and again, not because we are, just repeating the thing, but because we want to be able to compare. If you're making a 4th level character and half the time it takes for you to make a 1st level character, that tells us a lot about the learning curve of the game.
Okay. So then when it comes to looking at from part A to part B, from first section to second section, and how we're expecting those things to go differently, what are you most excited to see? Like, what is the one you're like, I know all of this, I really can't wait to see what happens with the second part and this question. Like, is there...
So this is one of the big ones, actually.
Okay.
To be honest, the how long does it take for you to make your character? We're really interested to see how long it takes. I mean, we got some pretty outlandish responses, which I think included like, I read the whole book and that took me 12 hours, so I'm adding that to my character creation time.
Right,
and I'm like, oh, well, it's a subjective question, so that's the answer you gave, and that's fine. We saw, I think the experience of most of the people around our office and most of the people who have gotten a chance to play more than once has been, the more I make a character, the faster it goes. So we'll be interested to see if that gets shorter, even though you have to make more decisions.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Can you, so based off of the first section,
Yeah.
the data you're seeing,
Yeah.
can you see who is getting knocked out?
Yeah. So one of the questions we asked is, how frequently were you getting knocked out? How many of you died?
How many in the party died?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and what?
So okay.
Okay.
Here's a real interesting
These
thing.
are the ones that I would just kind of want to see.
Well, and these are some of the questions that are most interesting for us to do what's called cross-tabbing on.
Okay.
In survey parlance, what that means is you take the survey and you say, we have this question. I'm going to look at all the other answers based on your answer to this question. So, for example, in the question of, did you die? Right? I can separate all the people who did die from all the people who didn't.
Okay.
This allows me to look at all of their results on average based on, whether or not they died or not. So some things are obvious in there, like your game satisfaction went down quite a bit if your character died.
So let me get this straight.
I don't want to play that lightly,
No.
but it's also not a surprise to us, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about getting knocked out.
Okay.
So we asked how many times you got knocked out. And I won't go into details on all the numbers because we have 12 classes and everything like that, but I did break it down by class.
Okay, nice.
And I found out, and this won't surprise anybody, that barbarians, fighters, and monks got KO'd the most. They got knocked out the most.
Okay.
But Paladin wasn't on that
getting up in
list.
there. Oh, Paladin was not.
The other main fighter class and Rangers weren't on that list.
Okay.
Right? So, but Rangers tend very frequently fight at ranged. Paladins tend to be more heavily armored and have abilities to heal themselves, so that doesn't surprise us. Alchemists, bards, clerics, and sorcerers got knocked out the least. They are also all classes that have healing capabilities, so that doesn't surprise us either.
Okay.
But when we started looking at these numbers, in addition to the dying rules, we started to see some really interesting trends in how the game was playing.
Okay.
So first of all, let's cut to the bad number. 6% of characters died.
Okay.
Now, this is one of those things that in the very early days of the playtest, we thought we had a very serious problem, and we didn't have good survey data yet. And this is why.
Yeah.
In the very early days, we thought we had almost a 16% kill rate, which was outrageous. But as the survey went on, that percentage dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped. And I think some of it was people playing early, maybe not fully understanding the rules, maybe making some mistakes. We're not quite sure, but there was some bias in the very early surveys that led to a whole lot of characters dying. And as we went forward, the deaths dropped significantly. And with the amount of responses we have now, we feel pretty confident that it's around a 6% kill rate. That's good for us to know. You know, if we're killing 6% of first level characters, that's good for us to know. But the characters that died the most were clerics. So remember I said barbarians, fighters, and monks got KO'd the most frequently. And alchemists, bards, clerics, and sorcerers got knocked out the least. But the characters that died the most were clerics. It wasn't hard for us to figure out why this is.
Okay, you tell me.
Yeah. So if you're in a group and you're the cleric and you're, there's a decent chance the group is going to go, we got a cleric, we don't need much in the way of other healing resources, we have a cleric. Which means if you get knocked out, no one can save you. So clerics died the most, despite getting knocked out the least. So when you get knocked out as a cleric, you tended to die more often. There's some interesting... That says something about our game in some ways that there are some things that we might want to modify based on that piece of information.
Right.
It's a little early for us to do that just yet. But some of the uses of like the medicine skill and whatnot, we might want to bolster. Actually, I shouldn't use that word since we use it in a different way in the game. We might want to enhance the ability of the medicine skill, or maybe some other kind of healing ways, just so that our clerics aren't dying as much.
Right, and then, but where do they fall on getting? So wait.
So they get knocked out the least because they have healing, but if they do get knocked out, no one can save them, so they die.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but then following that, if we normalize for the frequency of characters, we find that fighters, monks, and rogues die the second most.
Okay.
Now, fighters and monks are also on that list of characters that get KO'd the most. But rogue is on the list of characters that die the most, and barbarian isn't. And we were like, why is that? Rogues don't get KO'd, knocked out all that often, but they do die a lot.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, of course they do. They have bad fortitude saves.
Yeah.
So they're going to fail those saves more and die than barbarians. And when you normalize for that, all of a sudden all the numbers make sense. So all of this kind of speaks to something that we're going to talk about here in just a minute, that talks about kind of death and dying as a whole. We saw some player satisfaction numbers drop rather significantly when their characters died.
Right.
We also saw a ding, though, for characters that just fell unconscious a bunch. It told us that we might have a problem with death and dying. We've seen some anecdotal stuff on our message boards and from people's initial kind of gut reactions. And when they first read death and dying, they've realized that there are some problems with the system and there's some things that don't make sense. That combined with now concrete survey data about how people are feeling about that has now taken it to the point where we're going to be making some changes, but I'll save those for just a moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these changes, and this is the exciting thing to me, is seeing all this data come in.
Yeah.
And then see a direct reaction to it.
Yeah.
I love that. So.
Yeah, and so another big hot button issue is resonance, right? So we asked about resonance. Now, with first level characters and none of them have magic items, we didn't expect to get much data.
Right.
And we weren't surprised when we didn't get much data. The only characters that did give us data were alchemists for the most part, because alchemists use their resonance to craft magic items. And we found that on average, alchemists ran out of resonance once per their playthrough of Doomsday Dawn. And of them, about 1 in 8 critically failed their check and totally ran out of resonance for the day, which is pretty small. But we're not making any decisions on resonance based on this. This is the first adventure. Nobody has magic items. So I know there's a lot of apprehension about resonance. There's a lot of folks who have some concern about it. We get that. We share it. We want to get more data. And right now we don't have it. So we're going to let things continue moving along as they are right now. And we'll see where it takes us. This gives us a baseline, but the baseline here is kind of not a baseline. The next adventure should give us some interesting resonance baseline. The ones after that will help us make better decisions about it.
Okay.
So that's kind of what people experience during the game.
Anyway. I mean, I think that's interesting stuff. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
The fun anecdotes and little extractions.
Yeah.
Of data that can be fun in a vacuum. That since I don't have to do anything with that data, I just get to enjoy it. And be all right, you have fun.
I'm the one who has to take those numbers and go, okay, what does this mean about how the rogue works? And there's some interesting decisions to be made there. But I think right now We're just starting to get some of those pieces. We'll get more as we go along.
Okay, yeah. And then now I believe it was Sifter was talking about how every other Monday we're going to start to see some big updates and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I believe, unless my calendar's wrong, that's this Monday.
It is.
Is an update.
It is indeed.
Now, the first time we talked about this, you were nice enough to compile a top 5 list of the top 5 things coming to the update on Monday. I don't suppose, just by some chance, Jason, you've taken the time to do something like that again.
I have indeed.
Yes.
So yeah, no. So just to wrap it up, because I know we're running a little tight on time. I do have a lot more survey data.
Did I skip over something?
You did, but don't worry about it.
Sorry.
I think we're running tight on time. So
we are a little bit.
Yeah, no, I figured as much. So we do have an update document coming on Monday.
Okay.
It will release. Hopefully sometime around noon. There's been some hiccups with our site lately, and hopefully those have all been resolved.
What are you talking about?
No, we got this.
We're going to visit this in a little bit. We will come back to that.
Okay. But we do have a new update dropping on Monday.
Okay.
And the first update was just 2 pages.
Right.
It was a 2-page PDF. One of those pages was the OGL.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and which is important.
Critical.
You know?
Yeah. So, the new update that we're dropping on Monday is 5 pages long.
That's a lot of pages.
So, we've added a fair bit to the update document, and I happen to have a draft of that update document right here. This is it. So I have gone through this, and I have found the top 5 rules changes that you should be looking forward to on Monday.
Drum roll. If I could, I could. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, no. So before I get to those, I have
You're really building it up here.
I have 2 little bonuses.
Oh, okay.
One of them is a correction to an update that happened the first time.
Oh, we're already correcting updates that we've already.
Yeah, welcome to the joys of a live playtest. We dropped an update the first time around that had a slight error in it that talked about the Alchemist formula book. It said that your formula book contains your choice of 4 common first level alchemical items. We left off the additional sentence that said, in addition to those gained from alchemical crafting.
Right.
So you're supposed to have like 8.
Yeah.
So we were, originally it said you get 8, and then people were like, oh, I get 12 because of alchemical crafting. And we were like, no, you only get 4. And then they were like, oh, so I don't get alchemical crafting. And we're like, no, you do. Okay, so we fixed it.
Then you just pushed the desk over and ran away.
That's right. Yeah. I also have one that we've talked about a number of times in stream, and we're codifying it now officially. We've said that changing your grip on a weapon requires an action, but we've recently clarified that reducing your grip, so going from 2 hands to 1 hand, doesn't cost you an action. It's going from 1 hand to 2 hand that does. That is the official rule now. So releasing your grip from an item does not cost you an action.
I just did that for free.
Yeah, it's just like dropping. Dropping a thing doesn't cost you an action. Neither does releasing your grip.
Great. Okay.
So those were the bonus ones. Now let's get on to the real ones.
Drum roll.
I can't do it. We need to get that on a button.
I know. I need to put a soundboard on here, and I can do it.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
It could be so much better.
So, number 5. We went through our spell lists and we realized that no one had Glyph of Warding.
Nobody.
Nobody at all. So we have added it to everyone's 3rd level spell list. In addition, the Divine spell list didn't have Remove Paralysis. We have added it to the Divine spell list.
Seems important.
Yeah.
All
easy.
right.
Easy.
Done.
Yeah, done.
Problem solved. Moving on.
Update number 4.
Okay.
There was a problem with counterspelling in the game. Those of you who have low-level wizards who could use counterspelling, you might have noticed that the action to identify a spell was a reaction, and the action to counterspell was a reaction, which kind of made it impossible for you to actually counterspell. We have changed that now. If you have the spell prepared, or had it prepared previously that day, you automatically identify it as it is being cast.
Ah, perfect.
You don't need to make a check, you don't have to make a roll, you don't have to spend an action, which means you can now counterspell. As a result, we had to make some changes to the recognize spell feat, changing the trigger there so it works.
Okay.
And there's a change in the spells section mentioning that you now automatically identify a spell, including the level to which it was heightened.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Moving on. John, put a check mark next to that one.
All right, number 3.
Number 3.
This is one that we got made fun of on the message boards bit.
What? You don't get made fun of.
No, we do. And to be honest, in this case, we kind of deserved it.
Right.
Bag of Holding
What?
had a typo in it. Well, I wouldn't say it was a typo. It was a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it had an activation entry, so you had to use resonance to get things out of the Bag of Holding.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got rid of that.
It's not there anymore.
It's not. It's just an interact now. It doesn't cost resonance to put items in and out of a Bag of Holding.
As it shouldn't.
That was never our intent. That was one of those things where it just slipped past and we didn't realize it until it was too late.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Done.
right.
Bag of Holding.
Number 2.
Move on.
Number 2.
We got that.
Number 2. The Bastard Sword.
Okay. I beg your pardon, sir. Sword.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
sword. Yeah, no, sword.
that
Yeah,
part.
all right. The entry, it said it did a D8 piercing damage.
Okay.
That doesn't make a lot of sense now, does it? It's a sword.
Is it really?
Yeah. Oops. It now does D8 slashing.
Yeah,
That's it.
perfect.
There are some
Done.
folks wondering if we can change it to versatile piercing as well. We're not doing that right at the moment just because we want to weigh some of the other ramifications of doing so.
Mm-hmm.
It might make the weapon too good compared to the longsword. So we're weighing a bunch of options right now, but this at least makes the weapon make sense.
Yeah.
And is finely balanced to be the weapon it needs to be. So that
Slashing.
fixes the Bastard Sword. Yeah,
Perfect.
It's now D8 slashing.
And
The number 1 change, and this one's a big one. This one eats up a page and a half of the update. We have revised Death and Dying.
what?
That's right. That's
There
right.
you go.
So right from the very beginning, we had a lot of folks who were a little confused about how Death and Dying worked. Because once you stabilized, and then you had to make another fortitude save to regain consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Once you were conscious, then you still had the dying value and needed to wait for it to bleed off.
Yeah.
That's going away. What we're doing is basically changing the I'm no longer dying half of the equation.
Right,
It's a little
right.
bit more complicated than that. I'll let the rules speak for themselves on Monday. But the long and the short of it is this. When you are healed, you regain hit points, you immediately lose the dying condition. It goes away right away.
Okay.
Instead, that first turn when you are back, and just for that first turn, you have the slowed condition equal to the amount of dying condition that you had. So if you were dying 3, you're basically losing your next turn. You regain consciousness, and you're no longer defenseless,
Okay.
but you don't get to take any actions that round. If you were only dying 2, you get 1 action. If you were dying 1, you still get 2 actions. So in some ways, that's pretty similar to our current system when you come back, because when you came back, you were slowed 1. You basically lost 1 action. But now, the deeper into dying you are, the bigger the penalty is.
Okay.
So you're going to want to get those characters back up and healed before they can fall too deep into negatives.
Okay.
We are a little concerned that this might lead to characters bouncing up and down and up and down and up and down a bit. We're a little worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we think right now, this is a good thing to test, and we'll see how people respond.
Absolutely.
We'll see how it works with part 2. We wanted to make a change like this at the start of a part. That way your
makes sense.
playtest feedback can reflect those changes.
And so you're afraid of like the yo-yo effect where I'm up, now
Yeah,
I'm back down again,
we
I'm
don't
up,
want
now I'm back down
we
again.
don't want
Okay.
characters to be constantly bouncing up and down out of consciousness.
Right.
But at the same point in time, we also don't want characters who get knocked unconscious to basically be out of the game for half an hour.
Yeah.
So there's a delicate balancing act there between coming back has penalties and not coming back is bad for the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to balance which way that goes. A lot of our survey data has told us some things that work in different ways based on what character class you are, based on how you played through the fights, and we're starting to see that obviously some changes need to be made. This is our first step. There may be more, but right now this document now contains a completely revised death and dying system.
Right.
We highly stress that it is important for all groups playing Part 2, starting as of Monday, to use these rules.
So then if they've not found these rules before, how do they get the errata? How do they get the changes? Where do they go to get those?
These will be posted on Paizo.com, in particular on PathfinderPlaytest.com. You will find these down towards the bottom of the page. Down at the bottom of the page, there'll be a link that says Pathfinder Playtest Rulebook Updates. And once you buy that, it gets added to your cart, and you can immediately gets personalized, and you can download it. Once you've done that, whenever we release an update, you'll get notified, or at least that's the plan.
Right.
So we'll make sure that works. I do want to note there's one other thing that got added to this update. We have a couple updates in here for Doomsday Dawn itself.
Oh, okay.
We started adding a few of those because we noticed there's a few problems in the adventure. In particular, there is one problem that is particularly onerous for Part 6. It's a map labeling problem, so we wanted to get that out now so that everybody had a chance to utilize it and understand it, because the map is labeled wrong in Part 6. So if you are GMing, I mean, obviously these are vital to your GMing experience, but in particular, there's a few things for Doomsday Dawn in here that are very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So that's how you go to get these updates that are coming out on Monday, which is very important.
Yes.
We are coming up on about 5 minutes left to go in the hour because we talk at length a lot. Normally, and so just so you know, we are encouraging people as our partners, Glass Cannon, are going to be playing a live playtest of Doomsday Dawn on their Twitch channel.
Yeah, it's starting in just like 5 minutes.
Yeah. I encourage you to click over and watch that. We'll be hosting it on our channel. So we really want to make sure that we're out of here right at 5, because we don't want to step on those Glass Cannon toes, as it were.
Those mighty giant toes with their huge viewership.
Yeah, they would kick us right back in the face and knock us out. So
it'd be terrible.
And normally to pass the time, I'd probably like sing or something, but copyright strike because I sing that good.
Yeah, no, I know it's really a problem.
So let's take a question or two.
Sure.
And right now, it'd just be something quick. I think that right off the bat,
We'll keep them rapid fire.
Yeah. Well, as best as we can.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking about multi-classing that I had seen earlier. If there's planning any changes to that, is there anything?
So currently, multi-classing is handled via the 4 archetypes in the book. I will say that we are looking very seriously at trying to release the other 8 before the end of the playtest.
Okay.
Just so that we can get a full, deep playtest of that system. That's the current plan.
Okay.
I don't really have much more to add to it than that right now. We're not reconsidering the system yet because we literally have no data on it.
Okay.
They're all the first level characters, none of them can even use the system. So it's not until the next part that we even expect to see any characters who have used it, and then we'll start to have an understanding of how prevalent it is in the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about ranged paladins?
Oh, paladins with bows. Yeah, we're aware that is a bit of an issue. So interestingly enough, a lot of people have asked us, hey, what's going to be changing between this book and the final book? And one of the things that's going to happen is all of the classes are going to get more space. They're going to get a few more pages each. Same with the ancestries. This is going to allow us to add some additional feats to the game.
Right.
So we're kind of letting the playtest tell us where we're short, where the game isn't meeting expectations. So a lot of people had said, hey, can I play a ranged paladin? We're looking at ways that you can do that. The paladin is kind of built right now to be the character who wears heavy armor and gets up in your face. So there's some question about how that actually interacts with the paladin's kind of core competency.
Right.
It'd be like suddenly building a bunch of sword fighting feats for the wizard. I'm not saying that it's something we can't do.
Right.
It's something that we have to figure out what it means for all of the other things the class is giving you before we just pile a bunch of things on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And to follow up on the live gameplay from yesterday, did we determine our goblins mammals?
Our goblins mammals. Well, I think they have hair, right? Some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure
they give live birth, right? They feed on milk, right? This is getting weird now.
We're making a lot of assumptions.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to ask somebody on the other side on that.
It is time for us to get out of here so you can switch over and watch some performers do their thing.
Some professionals.
If you are not watching the glass cannon, that would be very entertaining. Goblins do not have hair, says Mark Moreland. If you're not watching Glass Cannon, just so you know, tonight at 6, there's also Dragons and Things is going to be playing their usual brand of awesome Pathfinder goodness. So they'll be doing that. Glass Cannon is going to be doing the Doomsday Dawn, and everything is happening on Twitch tonight.
That's right.
Going crazy. So thank you so much for joining us. Jason, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For Paizo and for Jason and for your old buddy, Doomsday Dan, thank you for joining us. And don't make me laugh in the middle. I'm getting ready to say goodbye.
Sorry.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.